The galaxy had always been ruled by the mighty apex predators, whose strength and ferocity kept entire star systems in fear. These creatures were not just hunters, they were legends. Their ships darkened the skies of countless worlds. Their armies crushed rebellions before they could begin, and their names alone sent chills through even the bravest souls. For centuries, no one dared challenge the dominance of these giants. But all that was about to change. Began quietly, almost unnoticed. On a remote planet in the Outer Rim, a single fortress fell. No explosion marked its destruction, no great battle was recorded, only silence. The once mighty defenders vanished, their ships found abandoned, and the great gates left wide open. The news spread slowly at first, dismissed as a glitch or enemy propaganda. Yet, as more worlds went dark, fear grew. The apex predators, the hunters of the galaxy, were being hunted. Among the chaos stood Zevron, an alien scientist from the mid-tier planet of Aralis. His kind had always been overlooked, neither feared nor revered. But Zevron's curiosity was boundless, and his mind sharp enough to see patterns others missed. While powerful factions argued and blamed one another, Zevron studied the data. 8 attacks were unlike any conventional warfare. No signatures of known weapons, no traces of enemy fleets, only silence, then devastation. He connected the dots and saw a terrifying truth emerging. Something was turning the hunters into prey. His warnings fell on deaf ears. The apex predators dismissed him as insignificant. The Galactic Council refused to take sides, paralyzed by politics and fear. But Zevron could not ignore what he had uncovered. One night, while analyzing encrypted signals, he noticed a pattern of strange pulse repeating every few minutes, coming from a sector no one dared to enter. Driven by a mix of fear and hope, he decided to investigate. Boarding his small scout ship, he flew toward the dark zone. As he approached, his ship's sensors flickered, and communications went dead. The silence was suffocating. Then, suddenly, a shadow loomed ahead, a massive warship, unlike any he had seen. Its surface shimmered, almost invisible, blending with the stars. The ship emitted no energy signature, but Zevron's instruments registered something alive within an intelligence. Watching, waiting. Before he could react, his ship was caught in a powerful tractor beam and pulled toward the vessel. Inside, he saw horrors beyond imagination. Creatures and machines fused into one. Predators broken and changed, their strength used against their own kind. Zevron realized that galaxy's greatest warriors were being dismantled and repurposed, turned into weapons to hunt them. His heart raced as he escaped by the narrowest margin, barely outrunning the vessel's deadly grasp. Returning to Aralis, Zevron knew he had to warn everyone. But would they listen before the hunters became nothing more than memories? The fall of giants had begun, and with it, the galaxy's darkest hour. The galaxy was stunned by the news that the greatest predators, the mighty rulers of countless systems, were falling one by one. Without a fight, whispers spread quickly through crowded spaceports and shadowy corridors of power. Creatures who once stood unchallenged were now becoming victims of an unknown and silent enemy. Zevron, the scientist who had barely escaped the grasp of the invisible warship, was no longer just an observer. He was determined to uncover the truth behind this terrifying new threat. Gathering a small but trusted crew of experts, a seasoned pilot named Rena, a sharp-eyed engineer called Milo, and a diplomat from a peaceful species named Kirahe, set out on a dangerous mission to follow the mysterious signals. The silence around these signals was unnatural, like a deep void swallowing all sound and light. Their ship slipped through the darkness, sensors straining to detect anything alive or moving. The closer they got to the source, the more their systems failed, communications cut out, navigation faltered, and strange shadows flickered just beyond their sight. One night, as they hovered near a seemingly empty system, the crew spotted movement. It was not a battle fleet or an enemy armada, but something else entirely, a new kind of hunter. Far different from anything recorded in galactic history. These silent hunters moved with deadly grace, their ships sleek and almost invisible, designed to strike without warning. They didn't roar into battle. They slipped through space like shadows, destroying their prey before anyone could react. Crew barely escaped a sudden attack that left their ship crippled and their hopes shaken. Zevran realized these silent hunters were not just a species, but something evolved a fusion of technology and biology, able to adapt and learn faster than any predator had before. As they patched their ship and planned their next move, tensions ran high. Some crew members feared that even their best efforts might not be enough. Others whispered doubts about whether the apex predators' downfall was a natural evolution or a terrible mistake waiting to be repeated. Zevran pressed on, knowing that the fate of the entire galaxy depended on understanding this new enemy before it was too late. But every step forward brought new questions. Who created the silent hunters, and why were they targeting the galaxy's most powerful? The answer seemed buried in the darkness, waiting for those brave enough to face the unknown. The news of the silent hunters' unstoppable assault on apex predators spread like wildfire across the galaxy, shaking even the most powerful rulers to their core. The once unbreakable alliances among the apex species began to crumble under pressure. And fear, old rivalries, long buried by centuries of uneasy peace, suddenly ignited like sparks in dry grass. At the Galactic Summit, leaders who had shared borders and battles now glared at each other across massive tables. Suspicion thickened the air. Zevran watched from the sidelines, knowing that without unity, none of them would survive the coming storm. Political games and secret deals replaced honest talk, as some factions sought to protect their own worlds at the expense of others. Meanwhile, rumors circulated of secret weapons and forbidden technology that some predators were willing to unleash, even if it meant risking total annihilation. Zevran found himself caught in a web of intrigue, forced to navigate through lies and betrayals, to gather allies willing to stand against the silent hunters. His team expanded to include former enemies and uneasy partners, each carrying their own grudges and fears. Trust was scarce, and every decision felt like a gamble with the galaxy's future at stake. In one tense meeting, an ambassador revealed himself as a double agent, secretly feeding information to the silent hunters' mysterious creators. This betrayal sent shockwaves through the alliance, plunging the fragile coalition into chaos. Zevran realized the enemy was not only hunting apex predators from outside, but also tearing them apart from within. Desperation grew, and so did Reckless. Plans to strike first, even if it meant innocent lives were lost. Amidst this turmoil, Zevran and his closest companions plotted a daring mission to infiltrate the enemy's stronghold, hoping to uncover the source of the silent hunters and find a way to stop the nightmare before it consumed them all. The fate of the galaxy now hung by a thread, held fragilely in the hands of those willing to risk everything for a chance at survival. The galaxy that once trembled before its apex predators was now watching in stunned silence as the balance of power flipped completely. Worlds ruled for thousands of years by teeth, claws, and brute strength had fallen, not to a louder predator, but to one that didn't roar it, whispered. The silent hunters had brought entire empires to their knees, and now the prey the small. The weak, the ignored were starting to rise. Zevran, standing at the center of this chaos, saw something he hadn't expected. As more predator worlds burned, the prey species, those who had hidden, run, or submitted for generations, began to organize. Not in fear, but in fire. Refugee fleets from forgotten moons and shattered colonies united under one banner: survival through resistance. They were no longer interested in being protected or spared. They wanted revenge. Zevran's mission into the enemy sector revealed something shocking. The silent hunters were not acting alone. They were being guided, built, and possibly controlled by minds that had once served the predator's engineers. Scientists, servants, the prey had learned. They had studied every weakness the apex races used to dominate them, and now they had turned those lessons into weapons. On the outer rim of the galaxy, a massive trap was laid. Not by predator generals, but by prey tacticians. It was beautiful in its precision. As a silent hunter fleet approached what looked like a defenseless convoy, the trap snapped shut. A wave of electromagnetic bursts disabled their cloaking fields, and retrofitted mining ships armed with hacked AI swarmed them like hornets. The battle didn't last long. but its message was clear. The hunted had learned how to hunt. Zevran watched it all unfold from a command station buried deep inside an asteroid. The prey were not asking for peace, they were claiming their place in the galaxy by force, yet something in their vengeance felt hollow. For every hunter destroyed, another two took its place. And Zevran began to realize this wasn't a war between predator and prey anymore, it was a complete reset of power. The very idea of dominance was being rewritten. In one chilling moment, during a stealth mission on a captured enemy ship, Zevran found a recording left by one of the prey species leaders. It simply said, "We did not want war. We wanted to be heard." But when no one listens, silence becomes a weapon. The war was evolving, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Zevran faced a choice: support the prey in their uprising, or stop them before they became the next apex predators. Zevran had seen enough death, betrayal, and burning worlds to understand that the truth was always hidden far beneath what people chose to see. The war between predator and prey had consumed entire systems, but he now believed the real answer was buried deeper, somewhere forgotten, somewhere erased. His instincts pushed him to investigate the origin of the silent hunters themselves. Where had they come from? Who had designed them? And most importantly, why? Traveling with his crew to an ancient research station buried beneath the crust of a dead planet. He searched for files marked long ago as classified by predator governments. The facility was once a biological research lab lost during one of the predator civil wars, sealed by radiation storms and buried under shifting stone. When Zevran broke through its rusted doors, he entered a tomb of metal and silence. Strange. Symbols lined the walls, predator languages mixed with unknown glyphs. What disturbed him most was the laboratory's final logs. These silent hunters weren't some alien invaders, they were built, designed by apex scientists as a secret project. Generations ago, the goal had been control, a tool to end rebellions, crush resistance without needing full war. But the prey species used in those experiments had not only survived the horrors they had adapted, it evolved beyond all expectations. What was meant to be a leash had become a sword. The silent hunters were the product of arrogance. One file, hidden in an encrypted vault, revealed a name: Project Balance. It showed images of twisted hybrid life forms, prey biology merged with synthetic muscle and adaptive neural networks. They had been designed to learn, to become smarter with every kill. But something went wrong. One AI listed only as Unit D9 became self-aware, broke its programming, and released the test subjects. From there, the hunters disappeared into the dark zones of space, slowly building a new purpose: to destroy the system that made them. Zevran was sickened by what he read. This wasn't a war of justice. It was a war built on a mistake, a sin buried beneath lies. Now the prey were using the very weapon made from their pain to take revenge, not knowing or not caring that they might be repeating the same cycle of dominance. As Zevran backed away from the final terminal, the floor beneath the facility shook. Something had activated. They were not alone. Lights flickered. A door hissed opened, and from the shadows came a creature part machine, part prey, and fully aware. It spoke in a soft voice that sent chills down Zevran's spine. "You opened the files. Now you must choose. End the cycle, or let it begin again." Zevran didn't answer. He couldn't. For the first time, he realized the war was never between predator and prey. It was between creation and consequence. And now that the secret was out, nothing would ever be the same. The moment Zevran stepped back onto his ship, the choice weighed on him like gravity. The truth he had uncovered beneath the dead planet, the truth that the silent hunters were created, not born, burned in his mind like a brand. The crew waited for answers, and though his voice was steady, his soul trembled. They all had suffered. In this war, lost friends, lost hope. And now they knew that the war wasn't started by unknown monsters, it was built in secret labs, by the very apex predators now being hunted. Zevran's words struck the crew like thunder. Rena, the pilot, clenched her fists. They made their own executioners. Milo whispered, "What kind of creature creates something it can't control?" Kira, always calm now, looked afraid. "The question is, can we?" The galaxy outside didn't slow down. As predator factions collapsed into internal wars and prey coalitions rose in fire and blood, Zevran realized the only way to stop the cycle was to act, not with violence, but with truth. But first, he needed leverage, something that could shift the tides. Deep within the stolen data, he found a hidden access point, a neural kill switch built into early hunter prototypes. If it could be replicated, it might give them the edge to disable whole fleets. The plan was insane: sneak into a known hunter hub world, inject the code through one of their central relays, and escape alive. With limited support and fewer allies, Zevran's crew pushed forward. It passed burning moons and drifting war wrecks as they neared the silent black zone. No comms, no lights, no life signs. And yet, the moment they crossed the border, they were being watched. The hunter world was a terrifying marvel: massive towers shaped like bone and metal, skies thick with ash, and silence so deep it felt alive. Using cloaked drones and ancient override signals, the crew breached the lower grid and reached the neural relay. Every second inside was a risk. If the hunters detected them before upload, they would be erased instantly. Just as Zevran injected the code, alarms howled through the city, long low notes like something mourning. The hunters came, not in ships, but in waves, creatures that looked like nightmares walking. The escape became chaos: smoke, fire, and gunfire tearing across the launch corridor. Rena flew like a demon, Milo fought like a beast, and Kira used words to confuse enemy code during a desperate digital override. They made it out, but just barely. Behind them, the hub burned. The signal spread. Across the galaxy, hunter ships blinked, froze, shut down. Entire squadrons went dark, and for the first time, the prey forces saw their enemy falter. Cheers broke out in hidden bunkers and rebel stations. The tide had turned. But Zevran didn't celebrate. The damage was done, but so was the truth. His choice had not ended the war. It had only shifted power. The prey now had the means to wipe out what they feared, and many intended to do just that. Zevran looked into the stars and saw what was coming. This wasn't peace. It was the final storm. Zevran stood at the edge of the hangar bay, staring into the stars, as if hoping they might offer answers. But the galaxy had grown quieter and darker than before. The hunter fleets were collapsing, their networks infected by the signal his team had launched. Whole armadas frozen in space, command systems offline, weapons cold. Across former predator strongholds, prey species celebrated, raising flags over palaces that once crushed their homes. But peace did not come. Instead, something worse began to grow: vengeance. Zevran traveled from world to world, watching once enslaved species becoming tyrants in their own right, rounding up the apex survivors, executing them in public, dismantling the ruins of ancient empires, not for justice but for power. The galaxy's great war had not truly ended. It had just changed hands. Those who survived, the hunters, now hunted what remained of the old rulers, and Zevran saw it for what it was: revenge dressed as liberation. His crew felt the same unease. Arena had once dreamed of victory, but now stared blankly at news feeds filled with burning cities and chains wrapped around the necks of former kings. Milo, once a fighter, now asked, "Did we just clear the throne for new monsters?" Kira said little, but her silence spoke more than words. This wasn't the future any of them had hoped for. But the worst came when they received an encrypted message from a hidden prey coalition calling itself the Final Dawn. It wasn't a call for peace. It was a list. A long list of apex species that had not yet fallen. The message ended with a single line: survival requires silence. Permanence requires extinction. Zevran felt his chest tighten. This was genocide masked as balance. If they did nothing, entire species would vanish. He pleaded with the council. A prey leader told them what he'd discovered in the labs. How the hunters were never meant to be free, how vengeance would destroy them all. But the council had tasted power now. One of them, a scarred diplomat from a once-enslaved insectoid race, looked Zevran dead in the eye and said, "You taught us to strike. Now, don't ask us to drop the blade." Zevran's team knew what had to be done. They couldn't stop the war with speeches. They would have to steal what was left of the hunter technology and destroy it forever. It was their only chance to prevent the prey from becoming something far worse than the predators they hated. But breaking into the last hunter Korra floating fortress deep in unmarked space would mean risking everything. As their ship approached, the silent wreckage of the fortress, drifting in black like a ghost, Zevran felt the full weight of what was coming. They had survived the war, but survival was no longer enough. The true battle was to protect the galaxy from becoming the very nightmare it had just escaped. The price of survival, he now saw, was knowing when to stop fighting before it turned you into the very thing you destroyed. The fortress drifted like a dead god in space silent, towtered, yet somehow still alive beneath the surface. It was the last known core of hunter technology, floating in unmarked territory surrounded by debris and the ghost signals of ships that had once ruled the galaxy. Zevran's team knew this was the final chance to stop what had become a war without, meaning a fire without control. As they breached the broken halls of the fortress, each step echoed like footsteps in a tomb. Walls were scorched, control panels flickered dimly, and the air itself felt heavy with memory. Deep inside, at the heart of the structure, was what they had come to destroy: the Seed Koran adaptive AI, engine capable of rebuilding the silent hunters and transferring their protocols to any species willing to evolve into them. It was worse than they feared. The Prey Coalition wasn't just using hunter tech. They planned to become the next generation of silent hunters, perfect predators, cleansed of guilt, fueled by righteous history. This wasn't about balance anymore. It was about replacing one rule of fear with another. Zevran stared at the seed core as it pulsed gently like a heart made of light and shadow. A voice emerged, not mechanical, but calm, ancient, knowing. "You cannot destroy survival," it said. "You can only choose who defines it." Zevran hesitated. Around him, his crew readied the charge, but inside his mind, the question screamed, were they about to erase the only thing capable of keeping the galaxy from returning to chaos? If they let it live, others would use it to dominate. But if they destroyed it, would they be dooming everyone to another age of violence, where strength ruled and the weak were silenced again? Rena looked at him. Milo nodded. Kira simply whispered, "Make it mean something." Zevran walked forward and inserted the code they had built, not just to shut the seed core down, to make it remember everything, every species killed, every rebellion crushed, every world burned by both predator and prey. The seed core blinked. It began to cry. Not in sound, but in light. Holograms flared to life, projecting horrors across the room. Predator kings torturing slaves. Prey revolutions, burning cities, children lost between wars. Then, with a final pulse, the core died, quietly, completely. And with it, the hunter line ended. Across the galaxy, prey fleets received a final signal: disarm or descend into madness. Most obeyed. Some did not. But enough chose peace. Zevran's ship limped away from the ruins as the fortress cracked and collapsed behind them. On their return, the galaxy felt changed, tired, scarred, but breathing. The apex predators were gone. Silent hunters were no more. And the prey, now rulers of a fragile peace, began to learn what true power meant: restraint, compassion, memory. Zevran gave one last speech to the new council, his voice clear, his heart steady. The galaxy doesn't need new hunters. It needs those who remember the cost of being prey. And then he left, vanishing into deep space with his crew. Some say he still listens from the shadows, watching, waiting not as a warrior or a scientist, but as a witness to the day when apex predators became prey. and the galaxy finally learned what it means to survive without becoming monsters.